Professor Thakkar, should I start?
Just a minute, sir.
Okay, you tell me.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Tell me when I should start.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, good afternoon and welcome to all the participants in this third session of day 2 on this short-term training program on applied computational fluid dynamics for automotive, space and defense sector, which is funded by AICTE under the AQIS scheme. Today we have got a special speaker, Dr. Tapan K. Sen Gupta sir. He's right now the visiting faculty at IIT Dhanbad. Formerly, the sir was there in IIT Kanpur as a professor in the High Performance Computing Laboratory in Department of Aerospace Engineering. Regarding his academic information, sir has done his BTech in Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur in 1979 from Aeronautical Engineering. He has done his ME in Aerospace Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in 1981. Sir has done PhD in Aerospace Engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, Atlanta, USA with an CGPA of 4 out of 4. Regarding if we talk about his membership, fellowship and honors, so sir is worked as a senior research associate in University Engineering Department in University of Cambridge in the period of 1988 to 1990. Senior visiting fellow in the Department of Mechanical Engineering in National University of Singapore during 1999 to 2001 and July to December 2003. Senior associate in 2005 to 2011 at International Center of Theoretical Physics at Italy. He has also worked as a regional editor in Computers and Fluids in Elsewhere, USA in the period of 2010 to 2014. He has received PR Dwivedi Chair Professor of Aerospace Engineering at IIT Kanpur in a term of 3 years from 2011 to 2014. He has also worked as a visiting faculty in Technical University Munich, Germany in May to June 2001. Sir is having more than 122 publications in referred journals. He has delivered 42 expert talks, has 51 international conference proceeding and 15 papers in international conferences. He has also worked on many consultancy and sponsored research work. He has worked for HAL Kanpur and HAL Korwa design and development of deployable flight data recovery unit for Dornier aircraft, ARDB and NAL Bangalore for design of NLF aerofoil for regional transport aircraft in the period of 2007 to 2009. Delhi Metro Railway Corporation, New Delhi in tunnel aerodynamics and sonic boom at underground station in 2006. For DRDO AD Bangalore in theoretical aerodynamics of MAV in the period of 2010 to 2014. And for DRDL Hyderabad on hypersonic aerodynamics of HSTV space plane project in the period of 2014 to 2015. He has guided 14 students for PhD, out of which 10 are awarded and 4 is ongoing. He has guided more than 60 students for master's thesis degree. Sir, we are pretty fortunate to have you in this particular session. And thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much, sir. You can start your session now, sir.
Thank you, Professor Thakkar. Very nice of you to spend so much of time to talk about my past activities, which are something which I myself have forgotten. And it's nice of you to remind me of those. Anyway, it's an honor and privilege to be among you for this special short-term course on applied CFD for important field of automotive, space and defense sector. I would try to focus my attention mostly onto aerospace activities. I will split the presentation into 2 parts. Essentially, although I'm the spokesperson here, but I'm reporting results which are the efforts of many of my colleagues and young friends who have actually guided me, helped me in doing research over the decades. It's now almost 4. What I would do is I'll split the talk into two. First, I will go to the applied side of CFD as applied to aerospace engineering, on which we have made some contribution with the help of CTFD division of NL Bangalore. And this part of the presentation is prepared by my current PhD student and a scientist of NL Bangalore, Mr. VK Suman. So I'll switch on to that first. I'll come back to the theoretical aspect and other part in the second part, because I thought most of you would like to have the big picture first. So I decided to switch over this presentation in this mode. Let's begin with the impact of CFD as it is felt in the aircraft industry. I start off with a brief outline of what we are going to talk about. With a little bit of introduction, we will highlight the solution approaches, the various challenges. Those are specific to aerospace CFD simulations. I will highlight one particular software which is developed in academic environment, SU2 at Stanford University, and which is an open source software. And this is what I would kind of recommend to any one of you desirous of using open source material. Okay, here also I got involved in the early stages because one of our student, Dr. Amrita Mittal, she actually is one of the developer of this SU2 software. Then this will be followed by use of this SU2 software for simulation of flow field past Dornier aircraft. This is one of only transport aircraft that HAL manufactures under a license, but now I think it's solely manufactured by HAL only, and they probably hold the right for any such aircraft development now. I will also share with you some very recent result given to me by Dr. V. Ramesh of CTFD division of NL Bangalore, which relates to release of STOR, like release of a missile from an aircraft wing. And with these results, I will make some temporary conclusions, and then I'll come back to a research related aspect of CFD a bit. Okay. Just to introduce the topic, all of us probably already know that CFD is playing more and more important roles in for design and analysis of products and processes across various disciplines. Okay, aerospace sector happens to be one of its early users, so we are familiar with this, and we'll talk about this only. CFD analysis is important because you can actually use it for various components of an aircraft, and these days actually it is even integrated for flight control purposes also. So one of the strengths of CFD analysis in aerospace domain is its accuracy level at which it has matured. Okay, what we want to do with this accurate CFD analysis is design better components or aerodynamic surfaces, like let's say the main wing, the horizontal control surfaces, the vertical tailplane. All of these are designed in a better manner using CFD analysis now. And in doing so, what we achieve to do is we achieve to reduce the drag. At the same time, we produce the necessary lift that gives it the efficiency and maneuvers, which is very, very desirable for a good aircraft. Okay. And if you are designing a, let's say, combat aircraft, etc., then you would be interested in the performance and trajectories, etc. And that's where the flight envelope means the parameter space you identify where you can safely and effortlessly work. This flight envelope is a very important issue of aircraft operation, and that is where also we do use CFD these days routinely. And I told you in recent times we are using even control laws with the help of aerodynamic load calculations as obtained by CFD. Now, one of your speaker happens to be Professor Bhumkar, who is here now. He is going to tell you more about various sources of noise which arises due to unsteadiness of the flow field. And this happens even for aircraft because of various moving parts that flying aircraft shows up. For example, the engine or the propeller, or even during the landing and takeoff when we are generating a lot of lift, the flow suffers a bit of separation near the trailing edge. That happens to be also a major contributor to the noise. Okay. In addition, of course, structural vibration also gives rise to noise, which is transmitted inside the aircraft cabin, which leads to not only discomfort but also various other health hazards for the passengers and the users. Okay. And some of these problems are tackled via not only using the CFD in analysis mode, but we actually take it to a design mode, which requires a knowledge of optimization theory. So this is a basic requirement. First, you have to be able to analyze, and once you can analyze, you can find out the parameter space where your performance will be optimal. Okay, so that's what we want to do. There are a couple of things that we have to distinguish. One of it is that in applying CFD, we try to look at the external aerodynamics problem. That's what I have been talking about: the aircraft wing, the fuselage, the empennages, etc. But it also plays equally the same role that when you look at, let's say, the flow inside a jet engine. Okay, and that also involves not only the simple flow of a single phase fluid. You would have multiple phases present, you will have multiple species present, and some of these species will interact or react with each other. Somewhere you will also have the combustion. All these are also contributor of noise sources. So you will get to know when Professor Bhumkar talks about it. Okay, now with the development of aircraft, we have seen that starting from Wright brother, it was understood that the design depended very heavily on experimental results. And for that matter, Eiffel and subsequently Wright brothers perfected wind tunnel. And these wind tunnels were virtually the backbone of almost all early aircraft design all the way up to 1960s. And it was only after 1960s the role of theoretical and computational fluid dynamics came into picture, and design loop involved these elements for various subcomponents, the wings and the fuselage, etc. Okay, so you are now being told that increasingly we are going to use CFD results, which will going to replace the wind tunnel test. But what remains to be done is to calibrate our CFD results with the actual flying aircraft data. That is what you acquire in performing flight test. Okay, so this is your ultimate test, because you see wind tunnel tests are also limited. Why? Because we do not test the full scale aircraft. We actually use a small scale model of the flying component, and that's where the scale effects come in. In addition, you put it inside a wind tunnel, so the wind tunnel wall has its adverse effects and actually sort of affect your quality of results. So these are the limitations. So that's the reason we would like to replace as much of wind tunnel testing as possible. Okay, and of course, because of the smallness of the size of the scale of the model in the wind tunnel, we do not match the flight parameters. We need to match the flight conditions, and that can be only achieved when you are doing flight testing. I will tell you about a particular development in 1960s in terms of natural laminar flow wings, which are actually seen in all later day design of Boeing. For example, Boeing 757 onwards to 787, all of these aircraft, then various Airbus passenger aircraft, etc. They also use this natural laminar flow wing, and these were essentially not designed very much in the wind tunnel. These were essentially designed theoretically and then directly via flight test. Okay, so you can see that CFD is doing a very good job. It is taking up a new role to solve specific problems or issues which are related to design of an aircraft. Thus, it will be fair to say that CFD has had and will continue to have tremendous impact on aircraft development. I am not going to talk too much about military aircraft, but that itself is a very exciting branch of study, and it has its own specific problems, which we'll probably not discuss today. Now, let me show you a slide which is borrowed from Professor Tony Jamieson from Stanford University when he gave a talk in 2015 talking about the status of CFD, what it was from the early days of 1980 onwards to up to 2015. 1980s decade was an exciting period because it was actually in this decade, Professor Jamieson himself was the first to produce result past a Boeing 747 jumbo jet by solving Euler equation. And that was the first time demonstration of a ability of CFD to tackle a full aircraft, of course, excluding the viscous effect, and that was done by Professor Jamieson. So he is probably the right person to really give this nice talk that he had given, and I borrowed this slide from his presentation. As you can see that the tools here relates to Boeing aircraft series and various reports and methodologies are given on the top row. And the tools, those are existing in Boeing, are also given here. These essentially involves various hierarchy of formulation, starting from all the way from potential flow to Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equation. And that's what happens now. And you can see that on the left side, there are these aircraft shown, 767, 757. I told you they used natural laminar flow wing, which were designed using computer. So these are some of the early uses of CFD for drag reduction purposes, for transition delay. And here is also noted this aircraft, Boeing 737, this 300 series aircraft. This is one of the really a good example of what CFD can do. This is what we'll see shortly, that CFD has virtually replaced wind tunnel testing to a great degree in designing this Boeing 737, For example, in the last row, you can see that in the early days when people were designing, let's say, these early aircrafts like Boeing 757, 767, for each of those designs, number of wings, those were tested in the wind tunnel, amounted to about 77 times. And now, if you come to the year 2005 for Boeing 787 Dreamliner, now that number of design, sorry, the testing has been brought down from 77 to 11. So, by and large, you can say there has been a kind of a 50% reduction in wind tunnel testing. So that's the first point. We have reduced wind tunnel testing, and this in turn demonstrates the how CFD has matured as a tool, and it has also earned the trust and confidence of the user. That is most important. Without this element, I don't think any activity in CFD makes any sense. This is particularly important in the context of this country because we notice that a lot of places people are using commercial software and they keep using it without any worry or any clarity of validating the results, testing the results. These things are absolutely necessary. So, needless to say that when you are designing an aircraft, you cannot take a chance. If you have a badly designed automobile, at the most it will stop in the middle of the road, but you cannot have an aircraft stop in the middle of the air. There would be a loss of life and loss of valuable resource. So you can see why aerospace CFD has played a leading role in defining the accuracy and reliability of CFD as a tool. Now, we were talking about this use of CFD in aircraft development programs. So you can see that when it comes to the commercial aircraft development, this is well documented in that paper that I just now referred to, Professor Jamison's AIA conference SciTech paper. And this review paper given here below, it's a work reported by Xiao and Chinella. This talks about quantification of your RAM simulation. And you want to really quantify what? You are using different types of equations, different types of models in the equation, and you want to quantify how accurate are those results. And this is published in Progress in Aerospace Sciences. It's not a very big paper, but it's a fairly well documented paper for one to go through and understand. And both of these references attribute to the success of Boeing 737 due to the design of high-speed wing. Not only during the cruise configuration when it is flying steady and level, but also how it has actually managed to integrate not only the wing design, but how it is coupled with the placement of the engine. Okay, so this is something that is important. Some of you may realize that in recent times, some of these
Hello. So your voice is not coming. Hello, Dr. Tapan. Hello, Dr. Tapan. Am I audible?
Yeah, Professor Mershi, maybe actually there may be some problem. He will join.
Okay, sir.
We,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
can wait for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, sir. To all the participants, speaker will join shortly.
Hello, Professor Mershi.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just now Sengupta sir called me. He said that actually they had a power cut. He's
Okay.
trying to actually join. Just like some couple of minutes are required. So
No issues.
that is the actually source of problem.
No
So
issue.
he's
Yeah. So Dr. Tapan Singh Gupta will join in couple of
hello, sir.
minutes.
Hello.
Yeah, now it's okay, right? কোথায় ছিল এটা? এখানে, right? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, we can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry for this power outage.
No issues, sir.
That's why.
Yeah, no
I,
issues.
okay, okay. I'll start from here again. We were talking about commercial aircraft development, specifically in Boeing, and Boeing 737 happens to be one of the classical example, which not only designed a very good aircraft wing, but it also solved the problem of how the wing and engine location has to be integrated so that you can increase the speed at the same time, have less interference drag. Okay, so that's what we have shown. I am now going to show you a similar walk around chart for Airbus industry also. But let's look at the story of Boeing 737-300 series aircraft. And there is this quotation given here by Walt Gillet, where he says that without the understanding gained from CFD, there would not have been a 737-300 program. Okay, and this originated with the design of McDonnell Douglas MD-80 design, which started in 78, but the CFD go ahead started around in 80s, and then the 737-300 program took off, and because of this, they could actually sell this aircraft, which is now more than 5,000 in numbers. Okay, and how did they design? Of course, they did the CFD design, but they also had a flight test bed, which was essentially a Boeing 707 fitted with a CFM 56 engine, and this CFD design was validated using this flight test data. Okay, and later on, Walt Gillette became the vice president for Dreamliner design, and he is right now retired. Okay, so this you can see that how it is. You can also notice the side view of this aircraft wing and the engine. A conventional nacelle installation would be somewhat like this. A pylon will carry the nacelle, but many a times, if you would have done that, then you would see that the aircraft wing, the wheel would not have touched the ground. So this has to be integrated very carefully, and this was done with multiple design loop of this wing and engine integration program. Okay, now let's go and take a look at the current state of art in Dreamliner design, and you can see that it has it's basically a contribution in every place. I don't want to repeat all of this, but you can see it starts from a thing which we never thought would have taken place, this nacelle design itself, which houses the engine. Then look at the winglet, which is at the tip of the wing. This winglet actually minimizes the induced drag, and this has been also designed using CFD. Then you have a lot of transition control devices. For example, the CL alpha, that lift curve slope property is enhanced by applying this vortex generator, which actually prevents the spanwise flow and reduce three-dimensionality, reduces drag. It actually also used for aeroelastic studies, so that it could be flatter, it could be buffet boundary, there could be many things. And additionally, of course, you would like to design the flap, the ailerons of the wings, which are the essential necessary component for high lift devices of an aircraft. Okay, and you can see that today we are talking about design for stability and control. We are even talking about how an overflying aircraft creates noise for the community living in the flight path corridor. Okay, so you can see that everywhere CFD is playing its role. Nowadays, people are even looking at how flying in an icy weather causes performance degradation of this wing platform. These are all studied. This control surfaces, the vertical tail, the horizontal tail are optimized using CFD. And I would not be able to really narrate each and every achievement that has been made in designing this 787 via CFD. Same way, if you look at Airbus A380, unfortunately, it is probably not going to be there with us for very long for various other logistical reasons. But when it comes to a supersized aircraft design, A380 is the biggest aircraft, and you can see the color-coded contributions given here. The blue items are the ones which are frequently used, and that's where the CFD tool is used frequently for the wing design, the fuselage design. You want to perform the predict the performance of the aircraft. Then how do you integrate the engine with the wing? Even the nacelle design, how the inlet of the engine is designed, how the winglet of the Airbus is designed. Please note that this winglet is distinctly different from the one that I showed you for the Dreamliner. But interestingly enough, all these winglets for Boeing and Airbus comes from the same company. Okay, so you can see these are different for different configurations, and you can see the moderately use of CFD is in those places where we can see what is shown in green color. For example, aeroelastic performance given in terms of flutter prediction. Then you want to find out the spoiler or control surface designs, that you will also check it once in a while. Then you want to find out the static deformation of the aircraft itself, because the structural dynamicist will demand that you tell them about the various modes of deformation. Okay. So for a piece of information, for a Boeing 747, the static deformation of the wing tip is about 12 feet. So you can imagine an aircraft in flight deforms by that amount from its location that is in the runway. So these things are quite important, but these are done once in a while. Then you also design the nozzles, etc., for various engine core compartments, then cockpit avionics, ventilation, and the low speed aspect of this wing is important. It is important. It is important because you see, even though this aircraft is able to fly at transonic speed, during landing and takeoff, it will go at a very low speed. And that is also the speed regime where you would be generating very high amount of lift. And that's why it is very essential that landing and takeoff performance has to be immaculately designed for the safety reason, and also for optimality of the runway length, etc. And these are necessary, that when you design a transonic wing aircraft, you still have to worry about its low speed performance. And the red colored items are the ones where CFD is currently being used. So if any of you would like to get involved in some of this aircraft design activities, you can see what are these areas are. For example, aeroacoustics is one area. Then, the control system design is one area. Then you would also like to find out the ground effect during landing and takeoff. These are some interesting areas of studies. That you would like to further reduce the runway length, then your thrust reversal mechanism should be optimized. Then, of course, cabin noise is a very big vital area that requires attention for the health and safety of cabin crew and the pilot. And of course, all of us do worry about cabin ventilation. Then, this vortex generator and strakes, wing strakes are designed for flow control purposes. And sometimes those are even used for various stings. Those are used not only during flight, even during wind tunnel testing. They use stings, and you may like to study the effect of sting on the performance of the full aircraft. So you can see these are the essential information. I suppose I'm just sharing information. Maybe many of you are already familiar with it, but still for the sake of completeness, let me go through the solution approaches. The solution approaches that we use has various ranges of activities. For example, I show you in the next slide that we started off in early 60s, where we had a model which was essentially a potential flow model, which was linearized. These are the days where we would use panel method to solve Laplace's equation. You may be thinking to solve a linear partial differential equation till 1960. But let me remind you that during the Second World War, it was Professor Norbert Wiener at MIT. He made the first proposal for studying flow past a aircraft wing by solving Laplace's equation during Second World War. That is at 1944. And it took another 20 years before we actually got the digital computer and we started solving the flow past a aircraft wing using this Laplace's equation. Once this was done, people were interested in trying to predict the aircraft performance at a higher speed. So compressibility effects come into play, and we come into transonic flow regime. And that's where we came into this nonlinear potential flow models. Okay, so please do understand, again, it's still we are making an assumption of irrotational flow. So that's why we are using full potential equation or transonic small disturbance equation in 1970s. And then came the momentary era of 1980s, where we could now first time include the rotational effect by first integrating the boundary layer results along with the potential flow results, nonlinear potential flow results, or you use Euler equation for the inviscid part and the boundary layer for the viscous part. This went on in 80s till we came to 1990s, when we started using Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equation. So this is essentially the time average Navier-Stokes equation, and that's what we are talking about solution approaches that we have stated here. Please take a look at the second last point, where we say that while potential flow approach has been extensively used in the past, nowadays simulation is based on Euler or Navier-Stokes equation. This is your industry standard now, okay? And if you are trying to solve Navier-Stokes equation, you got to understand what you are trying to do. You are right now at the bottom of this Navier-Stokes equation curve that I am showing you. This actually solves the time average Navier-Stokes equation. In the next stage, people would like to do is use some bit of this RANS solution along with large eddy simulation. This is also an approximate method, but in the hierarchy, this is a better resolved physics approach, because anything that is not resolved is being modeled by this subgrid scale models, Elias models, and people try to do that. There are some conceptual difficulties because the RANS is a time average approach, while LES is a space averaged approach. You will find that in industry these days, a lot of people mix up these two without actually distinguishing between the two. It's a mistake, but it's ongoing mistake. So I complain, but I can't solve this problem. The practitioners have to be aware of this lacunae. The next stage will be when we will reach the level where we will be performing space averaged equation, that large eddy simulation equation. In fact, for the last 20, 30 years, we have been doing some of this large eddy simulation solutions at HPCL in Kanpur, and which now even continues. And at the top of this hierarchy lies your direct numerical simulation, or DNS. In DNS, you use no model. Like for example, in LES, you needed a model of subgrid scale or SGS model. In RANS, you need a turbulence model. And of course, left-hand side, all these equations themselves are models itself. Starting from Laplace's equation to RANS, they are models. But once you reach RANS, you can only improve by having better and better models inside the RANS for turbulence, or you can completely avoid making time averaging, instead do space averaging and perform large eddy simulation result, or you come to this. We are not there yet. DNS is not ready for full aircraft. Okay, so that's what we say. For the solution of NSE at the apex of such approaches is DNS, is followed by LES, with RANS making the last in terms of fidelity or accuracy. Okay, so we have now understood what we do. Now, how do we tackle these problems? Tackling these problems require approaching any given model equation, solving by different methods of discretization. For example, one can do finite differences, one can do finite volume method, or one can do finite method. Okay, most of you are familiar with finite difference method. It is most theoretically resolved part, so I don't need to really tell you more about it. But this is the correct differential equation approach. The next in hierarchy is the finite volume approach. It's an integral form of the equation in the discrete space, and finite element is actually a weak form analysis, or the variational form of the differential equation. Finite difference method usually requires structured grid, but these days we also use something called immerse boundary method, which actually uses Cartesian grid. So for complete aircraft also, people are trying to solve the full aircraft solution using Cartesian grid. This is an issue in the making. The issue is that with finite difference method, you can get much higher accuracy as compared to finite volume or finite element method. What is the advantage of finite volume and finite element method is their usage of unstructured grid. You can see there is no structure here. You can keep on increasing the number of cells as and where you require more accuracy. However, these methods are lower order accurate, so they provide less fidelity, but unfortunately they are more suitable for complex geometry, and that's why most of the open source software, be it in commercial or in the open forum, they are using this unstructured grid approach. Most of the research work gets done in all the three branches, but FDM leads the way in research for higher accuracy solution. So the challenges associated with these are these, that DNS or LES is impossible for full-scale configuration at this point. However, if we are looking at separated flow past a wing section, looking at the stall of wings, or look at the landing or climb performance, we still are not there to really solve the problem in its entirety. That's what we are saying, that full aircraft or turbo machinery simulations, they are essentially complex geometries there you still are using some of those model canonical problems or using some of those unstructured grid method approaches. Okay. There are other methods that we can talk about. For example, RANS is employed during late stages of conceptual designs and at all stages of detailed designs. RANS and its variants is current accepted CFD standard in the industry. The solvers dominated by large number of commercial, in-house and open source finite volume solvers are dependent upon because of their robustness and ease of usage. Okay. One of the requirement is the solver must be at least second order accurate. Unfortunately, some of this commercial and open source software do use second order diffusion, so that makes it first order accurate. So that's why in parenthesis I said however, it's not true. Okay, let me just briefly mention the Stanford University tool, SU2. This is an open source CFD software tool developed at Aerospace Design Lab of Stanford University based on C++. It solves various kinds of PDEs, including Navier-Stokes equation. You can actually perform not only fluid flow analysis, but you can also perform many multiphysics analysis, many design problems, and these are available freely. So this is open source software. So please, if you are keen on using CFD for your research work, do not hesitate, go and use it, because it is designed with CFD and aerodynamic shape optimization in mind. But you can actually also solve problems of potential flow. You can solve problems of elasticity, electrodynamics, chemically reacting flows, and many other such applications. There are various compiled versions, executables available, so you don't have to even worry about them. You got to understand, go through the manual and go through this Python scripts and get ready with your activity. So SU2 essentially is in the fluid flow domain, it's a compressible Euler Navier-Stokes RANS solver. It can work in both 2D and 3D, and you can use it for incompressible flow if you use what is known as artificial compressibility method. Now, the governing compressible flow equations are solved in cell vertex based finite volume formulation. In recent years, people have started developing discontinuous Galerkin method, and it's basically a type of finite element method. It's a weak formulation, but one of the strength of DG method is that it gives you accuracy which is higher than second order accurate. Okay, and here are list of some of the executables in SU2. For example, SU2 CFD for CFD code. Then you have SU2 dot, it is for design purposes, adjoint analysis. Then you can study mesh deformation, mesh adaptation. Then you can export the solution. Then you can do some pre and post processing for shape optimization using various executables. Okay. Now I'll straight away go and tell you a little bit about some of our activity using SU2 in solving flow past Dornier aircraft. This is manufactured by HAL since 1982. This work was undertaken by consisting of researchers at IIT Kanpur and CTFD division of CSI and NL, led by Dr. Mutkavi. Okay. Scope of the work was initially to obtain aerodynamic data for Dornier aircraft. It's surprising that it took almost 30 years for HAL Kanpur to realize that they don't have baseline configuration data, and that was achieved after 30 years of manufacturing it. The codes we started using with panel code, RANS code, then with Fluent and SU2 version, and this actually was very important because with our joint exercise between IIT Kanpur and NL, we were the first to employ and validate SU2 for various aircraft configuration. As it was done initially for Dornier, I am told that CTFD division has used it for various fighter aircraft for Indian Air Force. So it's pretty good that we have the ability to do that. I am told in recent times that Tejas also wants to get some solutions obtained by SU2. The activity may have just about begun. So furthermore, interest in SU2 for CFD simulation in CSIR has grown exponentially, and now SU2 is their main workforce. So that's something that we should remember. This is the general outlook of the Dornier aircraft. It's essentially used now by Coast Guard, Navy, and Air Force. It looks very rudimentary, but it has a very nice wing section. Unfortunately, the fuselage is unpressurized, so it is fitted with propeller engine, and it has a ceiling of only about 10,000, 12,000 feet, not more than that. And I will show you some results that we had obtained. This was the pressure contour that we obtained as seen from the top of the aircraft and from the bottom. You can see that because of the Coast Guard applications, it is fitted with any number of antennas and this underbellies which houses various other devices, and this makes it look very ungainly, and its safety has to be ensured. When think of this aircraft landing and one of the propeller engine malfunctions, that's why you'll have to be very careful. Okay, so this was the first set of results that we produced, I think 2013 and 14. And you can see this is a graph which shows lift coefficient plotted versus angle of attack. And the experimental result is given by this open circles. And you can see that if you compute by Fluent or by SU2, your results match there. Even if you actually use panel method, inviscid solution, that also gives you a result, which is an overestimate, but not very far off. It's a fairly decent, acceptable result there for lift. But that would not be the case if you look at the pitching moment. And of course, for drag coefficient, you will have to at least do RANS calculation. With the knowledge of some exercise in this, we were asked by DLRL Hyderabad to actually find out the effect of putting in this Sharakshi antenna. This antenna is designed by DLRL so that they can have 360-degree view of a flying bed. And I have actually, as you can note, that various types of antennas are marked. For example, there is a rear fuselage antenna at the bottom, then there is a rear fuselage side antenna, there is a mid fuselage side antenna, then there is a wingtip antenna. Then you can see there are some additional nose side antenna, nose bottom also there are some antennas. So in addition, Sarakshi also wanted to put some additional antennas all around. So we had to perform this analysis for the configuration during takeoff, climb, and cruise. Okay. And we have to check if the configuration is safe under single engine failure case. That's what will happen. Suppose the aircraft is trying to land and one engine fails. Then you'll have to fully deploy this vertical tailplane. When the radar is fully deployed, it's a very, very difficult configuration for a pilot to land, and it actually creates asymmetric flight condition, tries to, and the pilot has to keep it under control. So this was the case that was studied. And we used this kind of gridding on the surface. You are noticing wherever there are antennas, we have put in some extraordinary density of grid points there, and the grids that was used for this RANS solution had 30 to 70 million points. Separate meshes were generated for cruise, climb, and landing configuration, and we used this version 4 of SU2 and steady RANS model. And the turbulence model that we used was that Spalart Alvarez model. And this uses, for its approach to steady state, a multi-grid scheme, which is noted here for convergence acceleration. And I told you that even you see, look at this uses Jemison-Smith and Turkel's second order scheme, okay, for numerical stability. In addition, it also uses Venkatakrishnan limiter. This is a kind of a limiter to control numerical instability. Steady RANS equations are evolved in a pseudo time, or you can use it as something what is known as unsteady RANS approach. We can do that. We had done partly both of this, and it is now doable. It uses a Euler method for solving this, and we continue, and this is what you get to see the pressure coefficient result. This is the top view, and you can see that this is not a very good aerodynamic design. Wherever you see this darker shade in the yellow side, those indicates basically adverse pressure gradient region. So even the control surfaces are not bereft of that kind of problem. And you can see the maximum, of course, is at the nose point. That's where you have those pitot tube, etc. Okay, now we purposely looked at the close view of the flow field near the antenna which are attached. Say, for example, this is in the fuselage antenna at the bottom, and what you are seeing here is the stream traces, and one can notice here is a full saddle point indicating a flow separation locally there. And this is the antenna which was near the wing nose of the fuselage, and you can see the very bluff shape of this antenna that has been put in this. This is one of the antenna that is fitted on the side, and this is the rear fuselage bottom surface antenna. Okay. And if you look at the flow field at the bottom of the aircraft, we have just flipped the figure by 180 degree to show you that these kind of attachments which have been added as this aircraft kept performing for the last 30 years, it creates quite a bit of non-aerodynamic attribute of the flow field. And for example, so this is the antenna which is fitted at the wingtip. I must tell you that from 2007 onwards, we have been supporting all the antenna activities of HL Kanpur for Coast Guard applications. Now, let me show you some of the recent activity. This is shared by Dr. V. Ramesh and his team, along with Professor Deshpande from JNC ASR. What you are seeing here is when you actually deploy a missile from an aircraft, you do not want that released missile, before it fires, it comes and hits any of the aircraft surfaces. So that, to avoid doing that directly in flight test, you do enormous amount of safety studies. And you can imagine this is a very complex analysis because of this particular thing. What I have been telling you so far is essentially for a particular configuration, we are solving steady RAMs, okay? Time average RAM solution. Now what you do for stored separation, you will generate the mesh, you will find out the aerodynamic forces and moments, and then you will treat the aircraft as a 6 degree of freedom body, and you allow those stores, etc., to fall. So those characteristics of stores, their locations, and how they are ejected, they come in as an input to this 6 degree of freedom solver along with the aerodynamic load, and then you find out this motion of this ejected stones and find out where it is going in small time step. For this small time step, you have found out this. Now you are going to calculate the full aircraft load. Now the aircraft is not only the basic aircraft, but also with the release load. And you keep on doing this as long as you want to check whether it is safe to go ahead and certify that it is okay to solve. So essentially, you can see that this is also done using parallel computing. I have not talked about parallel computing, but you can take a view of this, the store separation problem. If you do it on a serial computer, it will take about 2 months of computing, okay, to perform a trajectory simulation for one particular case. When actually it was done using parallel computer using 512 cores, that 2 months came down to 2 days. But you still realize that it's a 30-fold increase in speed, but it's a lot of work. Here you can actually, I don't know, I'll try to show you. Can you see on the left, you are seeing the simulated trajectory. On the right, you have this actual trajectory seen in the, let's say, wind tunnel or later on flight test results. So this is essentially the thing that one can do. So I will just stop here because we have talked about it enough. I will just simply tell you one particular application where I will show you a research problem where we try to control transition and separation over an aerofoil section by using what is known as plasma control. What we do, this plasma is an active device which is fitted on the aircraft wing in such a manner that part of the device is embedded inside the wing, part of it is outside. What you are seeing here is a kind of a grid that we have used in solving this problem. This is essentially a solution where we have performed a direct numerical simulation. So it gives you a time accurate simulation of flow past this section with the plasma in operation. And this is for a aircraft which is called Honda aircraft, Honda Jet, which uses a natural laminar flow wing, and its cruise Reynolds number is about 13.6 million. Its angle of attack is 0.27 degrees, and it flies at a Mach number of 0.62. This is an executive jet aircraft, which is specifically designed for industry owners. They would like to have their personal aircraft. So that's what this is done. I wish I could show you a snapshot of this aircraft, but you can go to the site and see this. This is only released a few years ago. A fantastic aircraft. Okay, how does the plasma operate? So that is shown here. Here we are showing the plasma operation as fitted on a flat surface. Okay, so it has actually two electrodes. One electrode is exposed on top and another electrode is inside. So think of it, this is the wing surface, and what it does, you pass a alternating current between these two electrodes. This creates a plasma on top of this covered electrode. Okay, and this plasma creates a kind of a flow of ions which goes in this direction. So it kind of creates an entrainment, which I have called it here, induced velocity, and this is also known in aerodynamics as Coanda effect. So essentially, plasma creates a Coanda effect by which it tries to circumvent the tendency of the flow to separate because the flow is cajoled, forced to move in the downstream direction. Okay, so this is essentially what we are doing. We are creating a strong time-dependent electric field, which is created by a very high frequency, high voltage AC source, and that creates electrode to ionize the air, and plasma forms above the hidden or covered electrode. The ions substantially accelerate due to alternating potential, and it actually energizes the air by subsequent collision between the plasma, these ions with the neutral air particle. This air thus accelerates and forms a wall jet. So this is essential performance principle of plasma actuation. Okay, I'm not going to tell you much about this thing, but these are some of the references which are given below. I suppose Professor Thakkar will be able to share these slides with you so you can take a look at it peacefully. The objective of this present work was to model this body force. Essentially, you see what the plasma is doing. It's creating a body force which is causing the quanta effect, and that actually prevents your flow separation and transition. So what you'll have to do is model this body force. And this is done by various models. There are some models which are given here. Some experimental results are due to this group in Ecole Polytechnique in Montreal. This is another experimental result done in UK, and we have used it for this Honda Jet aircraft, which is reported in this reference 3. Essentially, you have this exposed electrode and this is the covered electrode. This creates sort of a circuitry, electrical circuitry, which is represented by a combination of resistance, capacitance, and Zener diode. So I don't want to bother you with all these details, but you can go through this. You can see this in our paper published in 2017 by Pramod Bhagde, Shomyo, and myself. We have published in the AIA journal. You can take a look at this. What it does, it essentially solves additionally the equation for the induced voltage, and from there we calculate a potential, and that for that potential gives us the charge density, and that charge density in turn gives us the body force. So that's essentially the point. This is the model that is proposed by us in this equation 1.8. This project is still active with ARDB, Aeronautical Research Development Board. It is still ongoing. We are trying to put in this coefficient K, P and K of F equivalent, and this is what we are continuing on our activities. And essentially, we solve the Navier-Stokes equation as given in this equation. Plasma actuation gives rise to FB, this force, and the unknown vector is given by Q, which is from the mass conservation equation, you get rho. X momentum equation gives you rho U, Y momentum equation gives you rho V, and this is the energy equation. And then we have the convective flux terms here on the left hand side, and these are the two viscous flux terms. FV is the body force term, which are given here. Fx and Fy are the component induced by plasma actuation, and that goes to do the additional work in the energy equation given by this term. Okay, so this is what you try to do, and we don't actually solve it in Cartesian frame. We do actually use a body fitted conformal grid, and that's why we go from physical plane to transform plane, xi eta plane, and use our compact scheme, which are all given in my book, which is written here. This is a Cambridge University Press book published in 2013, and you also get various other very useful information about compressible flow in this book by Hoffman and Chiang. I will recommend all of you to have a look at this book if you are interested in compressible flows. Well, I will not go through these detailed steps. It is rather cumbersome, but essentially we try to calculate these coefficients in our model, and we have actually verified our model by using this inside a stationary box in a way in the lab. So this is the flow domain. You have the exposed electrode, and this is the hidden electrode, and the plasma device is outside the box, and we create the plasma and we measure various quantities and we compute our DNS based result and check how far we have done. This is what you get. You generate a voltage form which looks like this. The current, corresponding current goes like this, and you can see because of presence of the Zener diode, it has this property of switching on and off the plasma actuation, and the corresponding charge density is plotted here. And this is exactly what I shown you in the sketch, and this is the computed result. You can see the body force that is getting created. This is the X component of body force in the top frame. This is the Y component of body force in the bottom frame. These are given in terms of Newton per meter cube sort of unit, and it's shown in the XY plane. This is the exposed electrode, this is the concealed electrode, and this is where your entrainment is taking place. And in one such cycle, this is what you see, the X component of plasma generating body force, and this is the Y component body force. So you can see there is a flip sign implying when one is positive, other one is negative. Okay, and during the cycle, you have this detailed variation of the body force which controls the separation and transition. And this is the flow field. It creates a plasma actuation, creates a vortex, and that vortex in turn creates a velocity distribution which are given here at a fixed location. So at different time, this is at a time of 0.2 seconds after starting the actuator. This is at 0.3 seconds, and it's at 0.4 seconds. And you can see the action of plasma actuation is to create this convecting vortex, which in turn going to control both separation and transition. Okay. And this is what we have done for transonic flow past that Honda jet wing. I will show you some calculation here. If you plot the pressure coefficient as a function of x by c, and that Cp versus x by c is plotted as a function of time, this is what you are going to see. The average flow field is given by this green line, and the red line gives you the instantaneous lines, and the green square is the flight test data. And you can see what DNS can do when you
Sorry to interrupt, sir, but your animation is not visible.
It's not visible? Oh, okay. Okay, let me try to see if I can show it to you by any other means. Is this visible?
No, sir, it is coming as a black screen.
It's coming as black screen. Let me then try to open one of the thing and try to play the video. Can I share this? Can you see this now?
Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Okay, so this is the sum and substance of nearly 10 years of activity. Okay, on top what you are seeing essentially is the SHM1 is the name of the aerofoil, and we are showing you the gradient of density contour that will help you in visualizing wherever the shock wave is going to be formed. That is indicated by this vertical strip here. And you can see this, Professor Bhumkar will tell you these are what are called as Kuta waves. These are sound waves created near the trailing wedge, and that propagates towards the leading edge of the wing. Okay? And you can see how complex a DNS calculation is going to be. And this is at a full scale Reynolds number for this Mach number. So there is absolutely no substitute for this other than doing a flight test result. So we have arrived at that kind of stage, but please understand this is only for a single section of the wing. Here the density contours are shown here, and you can see this is where actually the shock may form at subsequently higher Mach number, not at 0.62. If you take it about 0.68 or so, that's where the shock will be forming over here. Okay. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the CP plot. CP plot, you see, the instantaneous line is shown by the green lines, right? And the red line is your time average result. That's what everybody will show you from RAM solution or some wind tunnel test. They will make some measurement and they will do that. Okay, and actually this is going in a loop. Now it's the starting phase of the flow you are seeing. Now you can see there are disturbances which goes like propagates like shock wave is nothing but a wave, and that's what you are seeing essentially in computation. If you take a time average, you will see a jump here as shown in this part, but in actual DNS it will show like this, and this is over a very small time interval, amounts to something like microseconds. So when you actually take a Schlieren picture, it is an average over few milliseconds, and that you will be able to show as this. Okay, I think I have taken enough of your time because of this unwarranted break. We had to sort of take little more than I really wanted to. So I just would like to give you a sort of a conclusion here. I suppose you can see it now. Yes, this is the conclusion. I have told you that current industry standard is steady RAM simulation, and these were performed successfully for a complete aircraft with very complex system of antennas. We have provided the baseline data, aerodynamic data for this aircraft. We have also tried to simulate a case when, let's say a single engine fails, then what happens? Then we calculated the cruise drag. We found out that it increases the drag because of this various antenna, and that leads to degradation of range, endurance, as one would expect. Then we have shown you some of the other usage of this SU2 package that I talked about in store release problem. And of course, I showed you, ended with demonstrating some direct numerical simulation result of plasma flow control. I think I will stop here, and I would be available if you have any questions to ask, if time permits. I don't know what's the situation with our time.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, any participant having any questions, he or she can ask the question.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, I want to ask question about the missile launch from the aircraft. May
Right.
I? Sir, I
Yes,
have
yes.
read that. Sir, I have read that for launching missile from an aircraft, some parameters we have to take into account, like if the aircraft is climbing in there, then we can't fire a missile, or we can fire a missile from some specific height and some specific speed. So how does CFD help to calculate these parameters for designing missile or an aircraft?
I'm not an expert on this topic, so I must apologize upfront because you are talking about some logistical constraints. When and how? See, the reason that probably it would not sort of deploy the missile during a maneuver is because there is a distinct possibility that it can hit some part of the aircraft itself. At the same time, I must also tell you that in an actual dogfight, I don't think a pilot will wait till it achieves a steady and level condition to deploy the missile. Okay? Yeah, if you are talking about air-to-air missile, they will immediately deploy because the pilot has to stay alive. But probably your question refers to surface-to-ground missile. Those are heavy, bigger, etc. So I frankly do not have too much of information on that.
Okay, sir.
Yes, any other participant having any question?
Good evening, sir.
Good
Sir,
evening.
sir, that simulation you done in SU2 software, open source,
Right.
which you shown now.
The last one, the DNS that I saw shown you, that's our own in-house code. That is based on a completely compact scheme, finite difference method, structured grid. It needs all kinds of care to control errors. See, this is the leading edge research problem. So I don't think SU2 will give you this quality of time accurate result for that problem. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. It means that that software you created by your teammate.
That's why I said it took almost 10 years of effort. And I must tell you that many of the people who are involved in it, it started with V.K. Suman, who is now a scientist at NL, then Professor Bhumkar, he himself has worked on it. Then Dr. Professor Bagde, he has worked on it. Then there are many, many other graduate students who have worked. Currently, Prasanna Balaji is working on it in Kanpur. He is now our major active person and he is carrying out the work assigned by the ARDB to take the model to better sophistication.
So what that software name that you used?
I told you it's based on compact scheme. We don't market it or anything, so we don't have a name for it. So all the things that comes out from our lab are mostly our own codes that is available with various users also who have used it, but these are essentially in-house code.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, any other participant having any question or query? Okay, then on behalf of Mechanical Engineering Department of A.D. Patil Institute of Technology, I would like to thank Dr. Tapan K. Singh Gupta sir for accepting our invitation and delivering such a wonderful talk. Sir, your work on computational domain you have covered your presentation very nicely, sir. Right from starting of application of CFD in aerospace engineering, the impact of CFD on wind tunnel testing, the work that you have shown on related to say CFD simulations of Dornier aircrafts and different solution approaches for CFD in aerospace industry was really good, sir. So thank you very much, sir, for giving us time from your busy schedule. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure, and I thank all the participants and wish you all the best in organizing this course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all the participants as well.